Hello, my name is Kathleen Bolaños. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to talk about Dexa scans. What are they? What did mine show? And what did I do to improve those markers when I had my follow-up Dexa in 3 months? Dexas are similar to x-rays and MRIs in the way that they analyze your body's mass. It does expose you to a small amount of radiation. It's about what the normal person would experience in 3 days during the course of the scan. I received this Dexa free through the University of Colorado Springs. They have the Hubble Sports Medicine Center there, and they were conducting a study and needed female athletes. I am a runner.
Or yogging. It might be a soft J. I'm not sure, but apparently you just run.
Right before this first Dexa scan, I just ran my first 100-miler and was looking for something to motivate me to keep me moving during the winter. For 2 months, I ran baseline, and then the 3rd month, I increased it. I'm not going to tell you anything more about the study because I want to keep the details of their work private and for them to release whenever it's finished. So this was my first Dexa, and then 3 months later, I had a follow-up. I made one significant change that improved my bone mineral density in those 3 months that I'll be telling you about, but I'm also going to tell you what I do on a daily basis to pursue health. If this interests you, please subscribe to my channel. I have a lot more content that will serve you. This shows my fat percentile, the compositions of my lean mass and my fat mass, and where my BMI would rate. I am a female, and at the time of getting this scan, I was 35 and a half. I'm now 36 years old. My body fat percentage was 32 at the time of my first scan. And this is actually in line with what I was getting whenever I was doing measurements and putting them into this calculator. I'll put it in the description below, but it takes measurements and uses, I think, the US Navy's protocol to determine body fat percentile, and it was accurate for me. Now, what's interesting is they'll tell you, according to my age, what's the average body fat percentile. The average body fat percentile of women my age is much higher than where I am. You can see my purple dots pretty low. That puts me in the 13th percentile of women my age. So if you were to take 100 women my age and arrange them according to their body fat percentile, I would be the 13th woman. So pretty low body fat percentile considering my age. But I always thought 30% body fat was average. But it starts low, and then in midlife, it begins to creep up. So my percentile of where I am is about 13%, but my body fat percentile is just above 30%. Average for my age is more around 40% body fat. And it's just because a lot of women my age, I think, are in those baby making years. We're holding on to fat in order to produce breast milk. We're holding on to fat in order to have a healthy pregnancy. Or we're simply holding on to fat because we don't have the time to invest in ourselves while we're mothering others. But these years are so pivotal in determining our future health. If you want to be healthy in your 50s and 60s, it begins in your 30s. The 30s are the key turning point. Statistically, the average human being will not sprint once they turn 30. After 30, they're out of college sports, they're out of high school sports. They no longer have a need to sprint, but sprinting is directly linked to cardiovascular health. The average American will no longer lift heavy weights, and that has a direct link to bone mineral density. Also, impact has an effect on bone mineral density. Personally, I'm a runner, so I'm getting plenty of impact, but you'll see in just a second that my bone mineral density still had room to improve, and I'm so glad I found this out in my 30s. Before I turned 50, I already had osteoporosis. My total mass, 75.3 kilos. That's about what I was seeing on my scale at home. It was actually within half a pound, so that was perfect. And then my lean body mass in grams was 48.76. And then they look at the android gynoid fat distribution. This is the ratio between your hips and your waist. Again, that truncal obesity in your waist is what's linked to some of that cardiovascular disease. Everyone holds on to weight, and everyone holds on to weight differently. However, when it's surrounding your organs, that type of visceral fat is actually dangerous. You cannot drop all of it. You are meant to have fat, especially women. It's healthy for our hormones. You can eat fat, especially healthy fat. But personally, I do eat a very low fat diet. I use oil in cooking, but most of the time I water saute. That's the easiest way to cut out oil. When I bake, the most I'll add is a tablespoon or 2. Even though the recipe might call for a 1/4 cup or a 1/3 of a cup. Just by decreasing that over time, it's going to really help. Also, we do have butter in the fridge currently, but if we run out of it, we're not necessarily stressed about getting it back in because we don't use it often. I grew up in a home where we always had a tub of country crock butter, margarine.
When people do this, I don't really know what that means.
And we used it on everything. My dad even spread it on saltines. I do eat high protein, I eat high fiber. High fiber is so important. That's gonna help improve gut motility, clean out your gut, and again, reduce cholesterol levels. A low fiber diet is the leading cause of colon cancer, which is the #1 killer in men under 50 and the second leading cause in women under 50. And that is preventable. Obviously, there are genetic factors as well that you cannot control. However, if you are not eating 25 to 35 grams of fiber in a day, you're risking your life and your future. So personally, I eat lower fat, high fiber, and high protein. And I think that though this shows I would consider myself average, for my age, I'm healthier than average. And like I said, I just ran 100 miles right before I got this scan. So this is my bone mineral density. The black line here along the curve, that's what would have been considered the average bone mineral density, the 50th percentile. Again, if you took 100 women from the poorest bone mineral density to the thickest bone mineral density, 50 would be right in the middle. I was significantly below that. I was at 26th percentile for my age. So if I hold steady, by the time I'm 60, it will be considered normal. But the odds of me maintaining this for the next 30 years, I don't know. What's sad is I'm much more active than the average woman my age, but activity is only part of what plays into your bone mineral density. So my Z-score was -0.6. That gets concerning at -1, but it's not considered osteoporosis or osteopenia. So I was really glad that we caught it early while it's simply low for my age in hopes that I could improve it. The specific number in my total bone mineral density was 1.082. And I'm gonna have the 3-month follow-up to show you. And during these 3 months, I was required to eat maintenance calories. The benefit of eating at maintenance calories is that you have a higher likelihood of hitting all your micronutrients. Your bones need calcium, your bones need magnesium. It needs vitamin D and even vitamin K. The issue is a lot of women will simply take a multivitamin and assume that it checks all the boxes. But a multivitamin, I'm speaking as a nurse, not a dietitian, just so everyone's aware, you should still talk to your primary care physician. But a multivitamin also contains iron, and iron and calcium should not be taken together. I also was on Nexium. I lived in Cambodia for 5 years and in India for about another 3 years. And those 8 years while living overseas, I often had poor calcium intake. And then even in the United States, I was very prone to try to yo-yo my weight with extreme low calorie diets. And then when I did go off the diet, I was just eating junk and not concerned about fiber, calcium, protein, etc. So years of poor calcium intake is what contributed to this low bone mineral density. Also, while living abroad, specifically in India, I contracted an H. pylori infection in my gut from drinking well water. This led to stomach ulcers and ultimately esophageal spasms. I was put on Nexium for a very long time, even though Nexium is specifically only supposed to be used for 2-week stints. I was also put on high-dose antibiotics in 2 different rounds, and it destroyed my gut. Going on a high-fiber diet increases your body's digestive enzymes, and because it increases that probiotic and prebiotic fiber, I now have a great gut and don't need to take Nexium. However, Nexium directly inhibits calcium absorption and is directly linked to osteoporosis. So I regret that I did not change my dietary practices and get off Nexium years earlier. There was no reason for me to be on it that long. Another factor that can cause poor bone mineral density is estrogen deficiency. Our moms were always told estrogen increases the risk of stroke, so you should not be on it for very long. However, studies have shown that it's far more important for you to be on estrogen and that the benefits of being on estrogen far outweigh the risks. Our mothers were taught according to the current knowledge, but it was one poorly done study that got a ton of media and resulted in a lot of fear. And because of that fear, women told their doctors they didn't want to be on estrogen. But sadly, that one study that got a lot of publicity was poorly done and isn't accurate. We need estrogen, ladies. So if you are older and experiencing sign of perimenopause, speak to your doctor and advocate it. Here are some resources online to learn more. I highly recommend these doctors. Always listen to doctors and not just health influencers, including myself. I'm a nurse, not a doctor. This is not my specialty. These women have the education that I do not, and so I bow to their expertise. For body fat percentile, there are 2 ways to decrease that overall percentile: increasing your lean muscle mass and decreasing your overall body fat. Low-calorie diets that do cause weight loss also cause your muscles to get burned up to use for energy. And we need our muscle mass. That's what gives us a fast metabolism that we're jealous of these men for having.
Is butter a carb? Yes.
Also, low-calorie diets often cause micronutrient deficiencies. For example, how can you meet your calcium intake goals when you've cut out cheese and you've cut out milk? How can you meet your fiber goals when you're cutting out carbs? Your body needs fuel.
Your brain runs on glucose.
For me, I found that maintenance as well as just below maintenance and a lot of weightlifting has given me the best body composition I've ever had. Running can give you impact as well as jumping off of a box, jumping jacks, and rebounding. That impact sends those shock waves up your bones and causes them to react and realize they need to fortify. When you're pregnant, the babies need calcium. I got a cavity with every single one of my pregnancies. When the baby demands calcium, your body finds it for them. That's what moms do. But it sadly takes it even from your teeth as well as your bones. We need to supplement our calcium intake and pair that with a vitamin D to help it be absorbed, as well as pairing it with vitamin K2 to help the calcium get into your bones and stay out of your bloodstream because we don't want your arteries to calcify. As well as spacing out your multivitamin. I was already running a lot. I already lift heavy weights in the gym, including heavy back squats, things that are known to improve bone mineral density. So as far as my physical output, there was nothing I could improve. So I had to focus on what I was bringing into my body. As I said, I was required to be on maintenance calories for those 3 months, but I stopped Nexium, started calcium, as well as increased my dietary calcium, because dietary calcium is what's most easily absorbed. For me, that means a lot of cheese. I drink a 1/3 cup of milk and my 2 cups of coffee a day. I also started taking collagen because that can help bone, skin, hair, and nails. So let's look at what month 3 brought. My body fat dropped from 32% to 30%. Again, that brought me even lower on what is considered average for my age. It brought me even lower. Where my little dot went, it went from the very bottom of normal to below normal. Normal, the average would technically be that black line, so my body fat percentile is distinctly below it. And you can see these little rolls created by my tights. Those also improved. That picture was embarrassing the first time I saw it. So my percentile went from 13% to 8%. My total body mass stayed at 75 kilograms. It just went from 75.3 to 75.1. My fat mass is what decreased from 24,145 grams down to 22,639 grams. And then I increased my muscle mass, which is quite hard for a woman to do. So I'm really proud that I did that. I weightlifted 5 times a week during this time, and I ran as many days as needed in order to hit the goal that was required for this study. The weightlifting had nothing to do with the study. That's just what I normally do. My lean muscle mass went up from 48,763 up to 50,015 grams. So my AG ratio went down from 0.81 to 0.79. Again, that's an improvement. BMI stayed about the same. And then my bone mineral density. And of everything, this is what I was most concerned about because I'm fine with how my body looks. I love the definition that muscle mass has given me. You can see my upper 2 abs and then a little line, like 11s they call them, down the side of your stomach. So I was really happy that I have some muscle definition even in my abs, though I don't have a 6-pack, which is fine with me. My bone mineral density improved from 1.82 to 1.082 up to 1.086, which is a change of 0.004 grams per centimeter squared. and that is an improvement of 0.4%. That is not much. However, that shows me that not all hope is lost. I am 36 now. It's been another 3 months. I'm not going to get another Dexa scan, but imagine if in these other 3 months I've gained another 0.4%. That's almost a full percent gained since this first scan in October. So every 3 months, if I'm increasing it by that amount just by improving my calcium intake, that's phenomenal. My running and walking hasn't increased. I'm not training for an ultra. My weightlifting has stayed steady. I've been very consistent in the gym, but it's my calcium that I needed to change. It was my intake. What that meant for me was that I went from being in the 26th percentile of what's normal. I would have been the 26th woman, remembering that lineup. I moved up one to the 27th woman in the lineup. Does this make sense? So in those 3 months, I added muscle, lost body fat, and improved my bone mineral density. Consistency in the gym is what matters. Once you've hit a healthy weight, stop dieting. If you've been in a diet for too long, you need to stop. Maintenance calories are going to help you change your body's composition. Again, that means decreasing fat while increasing muscle, which is going to change that overall body fat percentage while not compromising your bone mineral density. Did this help you? Do you have any questions? Drop them in the comments below, and thank you so much for listening to me today. Bye-bye. What are your numbers and what are you doing to improve them? And I'd love for you to join the channel.